What's going on, everyone? My name is Nicholas Merton here from DataDash, and today is June 26th of 2023. Well, folks, I hope you all are having a fantastic day wherever you are, because in today's video, I want to spend some time to try to answer a big question. Does Bitcoin have the firepower and the ability to clear through its prior relative highs back here from April of 2023? After over 2.5 months, we are finally back up towards these relative highs since the relative lows we had back around November of last year. So I want to spend some time to try to digest whether or not we've got the fuel to continue moving forward here. And I'm going to be using a whole range of metrics beyond just typical price analysis. So this is going to be a jam-packed episode. If you guys happen to enjoy it, consider dropping a like if you enjoyed the video, and let's go ahead and kick off the rambling. All right, let's go ahead and start here by just taking a look at price analysis here. As we discussed, this price range we are at right now is a very significant one, not just because it's the relative highs here where we were back in April, roughly speaking, and I know some will point to the fact that we, for a brief window of time, went towards new relative highs, but as we saw back in the previous cycle highs back in November of 2021, again, this doesn't confirm a breakout. We need to see an actual solid breakout above that prior resistance range in the past, and that's going to get us really excited. But I want to go ahead and talk again why it's so significant, and that's because right now we are at a price point over $30,200, which would confirm a blue flip on our indicator. And if we take a look back throughout history, I mean, outside of, say, the 2019 kind of short-term relief rally in price, which brought us pretty much back down to those consolidative lows, which, again, I think is a bit of an anomaly with COVID and everything. Nonetheless, even if it means just a continued short-term move for another month or so, or a start of a new bull market, that would definitely give us a lot of consideration to start to reconsider our stance here on the channel. However, again, it is not a confirmation. We need to close above that price range to get that blue flip. And I want to make it very clear that for the past few months, price has come incredibly close, time and time again. So close to getting that blue flip multiple times, and unfortunately it wasn't able to do it. Every single time we either faded or weren't able to hold enough gains that signaled the confidence for the indicator to hold. So let's wait until we get that monthly close. It's only a couple days away, and then we'll start to reassess things and see how things are starting to act at the beginning of the month. Now, this is just our kind of typical technical analysis here. I want to dive into the really juicy stuff here. I want to go ahead and talk about what's going on with the BlackRock ETF and the excitement around the BlackRock ETF. Now, if you ask the crypto community right now, especially those who are generally the kind of dollar cost average crowd, those who are really long Bitcoin and its philosophy long term, which I have no bad intentions towards or anything, right? Generally speaking, that community will tell you right now that BlackRock owns the world. They're guaranteed to get this ETF approved by the SEC. There is no barriers in their way. They have sent what is the best proposal in the eyes of the SEC, and therefore they are guaranteed to approve it, and therefore Bitcoin's price is just going to surge, and we are in a new bull market. That's the narrative that everyone is saying right now. And because other ETF files have come through from VanEck, from all kinds of names out there in the space that have previously followed Bitcoin ETFs, Fidelity as well, making a move as well into the space, this has gotten people confident that it's a slam dunk, it's guaranteed, that's why everyone's doing it. When in reality here, what I like to look for is what price is telling us. Because while Bitcoin definitely made a bit of a move here over the past week, right? We'll go here and take a look at here, 15% move, the biggest one we've had since back here in March. It's important to note that as we enter into this resistance range, we need to look beyond just price itself to see whether or not there's actually the institutional interest that everyone is claiming is going to drive up this industry. And there are other ways to analyze it beyond just the kind of moves that Bitcoin is making in its own price. We can see directly through equity prices like the shares of BlackRock, which should be, taking off like a rocket here as the company who could very well be the leading player to benefit from a Bitcoin approval of an ETF. iShares, its ETF brand, which it utilized to process the filing here, working in tandem with Coinbase, working with a whole range of leading financial players in the market in order to provide custody and all the necessary elements for this iShares ETF. iShares is a brand, which is again one of the brands for BlackRock for ETFs, is one of the best to benefit from a Bitcoin ETF approval. They have such a massive market reach, and if they're able, being the front runner here with filing their application, and having the foothold that they have, they should be able to really benefit from being in this market, whether we like it or not, whether we like BlackRock as a company, purely from a financial standpoint. So seeing what the share price is doing is very important to us. We should be analyzing that. And what has happened here with BlackRock stock since then? Well, on June 15th, the share price rallied from $694 towards around $711, a 2.7% move for the day. And the next day, it gapped open slightly above that at around $716 per share, around $715. And then since then has just been fading well below where it was on the day of the open, down towards around $608 per share. So what's going on here? Because essentially price action is telling us something that I think Bitcoin and other crypto investors, Bitcoin investors and crypto investors are not seeing when they're analyzing the market price of Bitcoin. And that is that the market doesn't really buy that BlackRock is going to get this ETF approval. Because if that was the case, we should definitely be seeing BlackRock continuing to carry forward right now. BlackRock, again, out of all players, could benefit probably the best in this market, having the market dominance and reach that it has. And especially capturing this potentially new asset class should definitely bolster its share prices, as it could allow for it to make more profit and revenue long term on passive investment vehicles. However, we are not seeing that here. The market bought into the hype and sold the news essentially within just a matter of a few days. Now, I'm not saying BlackRock as a company is going to crash if they don't get their ETF approval. This actually plays more to my point here. It's that the market just sees this as a nothing burger, that it's not going to actually work out. And essentially that this was just a hopeful application to see and test the waters whether or not we could get an ETF that maybe gets closer towards approval. Doesn't mean just because BlackRock is some major manager, just because all the other players like VanEck and Fidelity are coming out and copying the same position and trying to file for their own Bitcoin ETFs, doesn't mean that there's any guarantee that there's going to be a Bitcoin ETF. And along with that as well, it's not just analyzing BlackRock's share price that tells us this. There are a whole range of other on-ramps that institutions have readily available to them, and they've had readily available to them for a long period of time to get exposure, almost near direct exposure to Bitcoin. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is not only the share prices not really speaking about that kind of confidence, but when you divide it directly by Bitcoin, we should be seeing these plays exacerbate returns against Bitcoin, i.e. they should be outperforming Bitcoin's price to the upside. And we are not seeing that now. Let's dive into it, and I want to show you guys what I mean by this. Some of you who watch the channel here probably know that we talk about ratios. So one of those shares that we're watching on our radar is Riot Platforms. This is one of the biggest US miners for cryptocurrencies, and it has one of the biggest shares of ownership in the US market, and therefore it's a great way to kind of have almost this like leveraged play to the upside or downside on Bitcoin's price, right? From those lows at around the low $3 range, Riot from its lows to its highs moved up 350%. That is much more than the 100% near move that Bitcoin has made over the past few months, pretty much over the last 4 months since back in the highs of April. And if we take a look at a custom ratio here where we divide Riot by Bitcoin's price, we can see a really telling sign here, which is that previously in the past, during bull markets, we start to see an increasing premium being paid for plays like Riot. Riot exacerbates the moves of Bitcoin, and during bear markets, it gets hit even harder as miner companies like Riot Platforms need to likely dilute shares to continue funding their bleeding operations. That's a really fancy way of saying that they're doing all these mining operations and they're losing more money than they're making, and therefore they need to issue new shares, sell them on the market, get new cash, raise capital in order to continue funding those operations. So that hopefully at a later date, those Bitcoin, those assets they're mining are essentially going to be worth more. Their mining operation will be more profitable, you name it, right? That's the general game here. Well, generally speaking, we are seeing the same kind of resistance we've seen since back in January of 2022. Every single time we come up into this pocket here between 0.004 and 0.005 on the ratio, we constantly see this getting shot down. This is the continuous resistance range. And in fact, since back in April, we're actually seeing a weaker premium being paid on the overall stock for the company. You can take it here and generally see that there's a 22% decline in at net premium. That's not something to completely scoff off here, guys. I mean, this is really, again, a really telling sign because Riot is one of the biggest miners in the crypto space. And you're seeing this across the board on a whole range of different plays here. We're also seeing it here in a more direct play like MicroStrategy. Some might argue, Nick, mining business is complicated. Riot's not the biggest play in the market. Take a look at MicroStrategy, right? MicroStrategy is almost the pseudo Bitcoin ETF as MicroStrategy has monetized its business operations, which are much more predictable, and has utilized the monetization of that to raise a bunch of credit to go out and buy a lot of Bitcoin. That's why Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy, they went out and bought thousands upon thousands of Bitcoin, and now they hold roughly around, I think, around 145, 150,000 Bitcoin position, maybe somewhere above or below that, right? You guys know about the story, right? This is MicroStrategy's company. Well, again, as we see optimism return to the market, as we saw from, say, May and June of 2022 and to August of 2022, we saw rapid acceleration, right? Essentially from those lows, the market started paying a 170% premium on MicroStrategy. So you would have been better off buying the dip on MicroStrategy as a company rather than Bitcoin. The reason is because while they have monetized those revenue streams, there are eventually liquidation prices, and there is a risk that MicroStrategy could face immense losses if Bitcoin moves too low. That's why it moves in this kind of leveraged fashion. Nonetheless, we generally see when prices go up for Bitcoin, we generally find that MicroStrategy will outpace it and vice versa. All right. Well, let's take a look at what's happening here. Since back in August of 2022, we are coming up in just a few months on over a year here, where time and time again, MicroStrategy keeps moving lower against Bitcoin. Why is this? Because they're buying the dip. They're stacking Bitcoin, as you guys have probably seen. There's those tweets that come out from time to time. Michael Saylor comes out, they find some way to raise additional capital. They reach under their mattress and find some quarters, and they go out and buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. No matter how they do it, they keep stacking Bitcoin somehow. Someone's willing to lend it out to them. And still, on what may be arguably a longer term trend here, if you really want to draw it out, since back here in February of 2021, we have not been able to clear through this range. Now, maybe we will clear through it, and maybe we start seeing some optimism come in. And when I see that in the ratios, similar to our indicator flipping, I'm going to start getting the cue that, man, you know what? I got to be honest, maybe we were wrong on this. Maybe this is going to start moving up, right? When I start seeing those signs, guys, trust me when I say this, I'll get more confident here on Bitcoin's price. But I got to be real with you guys. The trend doesn't lie here. We've continued to see that net premium go down over time, showcasing to us that the Wall Street euphoria and optimism, those institutional investors that are just going to buy up all the crypto supposedly, they're not doing it right now. They could easily buy into MicroStrategy. Someone, if they wanted to get MicroStrategy's exposure and stuff, they can just go stack shares on the public market, get a huge chunk of the company if they wanted to. And I've heard a lot of people say, oh, but haven't you seen, Nick, there's like tweets or resources that show that BlackRock is buying acquisitions in companies like MicroStrategy. And that's actually a false claim, guys. The important thing you need to understand here about BlackRock as a fund manager is that they, in order to build the financial products that they offer, they need to go out onto the open market and acquire huge swarms of shares in various companies, whether they like them or not. BlackRock actually got a lot of criticism being a fund manager because they build these passive ETFs, say in the S&P 500, but they claim to be an ESG compliant company or care about the goodness of the earth, yet they're exposed to, say, oil companies or companies that have gotten caught in multi-billion-dollar corruption schemes in the financial sector. At the end of the day, those money managers or fund managers, they need to purchase these shares. So they're not buying MicroStrategy out of their inclination to support the crypto space by any means. They're doing it in order to provide passive investment vehicles for a variety of investors under various different labels and focus points. That's the key reason why you've seen those maybe potential share purchases of MicroStrategy. Right. And again, if they were really coming in and scooping up prices, we should be seeing it in the premium, right? We should be seeing some kind of outpace here against Bitcoin because there are limited vehicles for institutions to get hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, into the space. And these are those plays. But I know a lot of people will point me towards GBTC, right? We've talked about that a lot here. And to be honest, Grayscale's Bitcoin ETN product has definitely accelerated here. It's bumped up from around 44% back here in mid-June, and about 2 weeks later has come up here towards 33%. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, that's great to see. And along with that as well, seeing that the lows have been getting higher and higher since back in December does play well into the thesis that, hey, there's a bit of confidence showing here, right? This is definitely a good sign to see. But I want to see what's going to happen as we enter back into this range, because each and every time since back here in November, we get shot down at around 35%, roughly speaking. 33, 35%, doesn't matter. This range is where we get knocked down every single time. So again, I want to be very clear with you guys here. If I start seeing that premium rising even higher, right? So the discount starting to mitigate, right? Getting up towards minus 20%, right? Clearing through multiple months, more than half a year of consolidation. If I start seeing Riot and MicroStrategy trading at a higher premium, and if I start seeing BlackRock showing some confidence in price, I'm going to know well beyond the headlines whether or not there's any substance to this ETF hype that everyone is all juiced up about right now. There are too many people out there telling you guys that this is a slam dunk, it's going to be guaranteed. And unfortunately, as with most narratives, that isn't the case. Narratives usually they're not able to stand on their own two legs when it's revealed that the emperor has no clothes, so to speak, that there is nothing behind the story. It costs practically nothing for BlackRock or these other entities to file ETFs, seeing how quickly they just copycatted the work of BlackRock, so to speak, or copied the similar model or other similar fractions of that model so shortly after BlackRock. Tells you how easy it is to do these things. They have no net negative reason not to file, right? They have everything to gain from potentially doing it, even if it's a 1% chance of passing. And I would say those are about the odds here. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe now with these adjustments, maybe it's a 10% chance. But with the SEC going after crypto so harshly right now, I don't think there's any way where the SEC can justify, yep, we're now just randomly going to approve a spot Bitcoin ETF because of this one little change and because it's our buddies at BlackRock. I know that's the narrative that everyone's going after right now, guys, but we have had multiple failed narratives this year. And I think this is just another one of those. I hate to say it because I have no reason to be negative, guys. I love crypto. I love this space. I think that there is a lot of potential here, but there is still a lot flawed in the industry. Think of one narrative that's got you excited in the altcoin space right now. Think of any really interesting new developments on Bitcoin. If Taproot and Ordinals are what are getting people excited about Bitcoin, right now, I'm sorry. That to me personally is not making me think, yeah, Bitcoin can go from roughly 30K where it's at now to 300K and 10x, or even go to 200K for that matter, or 100K. I care much more about the macro elements here. I need to know where the liquidity is going to come from, because retail investors are shot right now. They're not even riding the AI wave right now. And institutional capital is very focused on AI as a topic right now. Crypto is not the cool kid on the block right now. Who knows, maybe they're slowly accumulating behind the scenes. And we've seen on-chain that there are some people who are stacking up big positions that don't seem to be exchange accounts. Doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to move higher. Not in the slightest, guys. Because when we look at the market order flow week by week, even as we're up in these higher ranges, we're still seeing negative market order flow. And that market order flow is what you need for the hype. It's what you need for spread, for higher moves in price, for valuation acceleration. It is the key driver of bull markets, and we just don't see it. We need them to come to the plate right here and right now and show us, get above this resistance range and show that no longer is this resistance. Yet again, this can become support and serve a foundation for a new bull market. That's what we need to see in price. And unfortunately, we have not seen the follow through just yet. Maybe we will, though. we'll have to see as we go throughout the close of this month, guys. And it's all about following those rigorous means of measuring not only Bitcoin's price, but sentiment. And trying to understand whether or not we've got the momentum for a new bull market, and whether or not it's time to get a ticket on the train and enjoy the ride. So anyways, guys, I rambled on a good amount here today. I hope you guys enjoyed my rambling session. If you liked it, consider dropping a like. It is one of the greatest ways you guys can support the channel. We try to put as much free content out here on the channel as possible. I will see you guys back here on Wednesday for another video. Take care, and I'll talk to you all soon.